So normally at this point in winter break, I would be turning back on all the alarms that I used throughout the day in my classroom, but I'm not doing that because I'm not teaching anymore. So back when I was student teaching in kindergarten, there was a teacher on the grade level. I'll just call him Mr. Patterson. And the thing about Mr. Patterson is that, like, even though he was great with kids, it just seemed like he didn't really enjoy all the other parts of being a teacher. So eventually he put in his resignation in the middle of the school year. And then after that, it was just sub after sub after sub. I think they got a long term sub sometime in the spring. But fast forward 2 years later, these kids are in second grade and we're having a grade level data meeting. And we're noticing that certain kids have these gaps. And eventually, someone put it together like, oh, these are the kids from Patterson's class. Like, the inconsistency really did a number on them. And at that moment, I was like, I will never leave in the middle of the school year. I can't be that person to ever do that. And then I started this school year. I have been struggling since August. And I mean, like, literally crying the first week of school. I think one thing that people take for granted is the huge responsibility that teachers have. You are responsible for someone else's education. How well or how poorly even a kid can read or subtract, or their handwriting, or how well they can recall events in history. All of that reflects on you and how effective you are as a teacher. And I have never felt more ineffective than I have this school year. And I did simultaneous teaching during COVID. But this year I had what I can only describe as just a very, very unfortunate roster. Like, instead of teaching, I spent the majority of my day putting out fires because, one, I had a lot of personalities that really should not have been together, and two, I had behavior issues that parents would rather put on me than address at home. And it wasn't all parents. It was not all parents. I'm not even going to waste my time trying to explain the ridiculous things that I experienced this year, because it's one of those things that's like, unless you were there, you could never really fully grasp. But to day in and day out not be able to do your job, knowing how much it reflects on you, it takes a toll. It got to the point where I was just this big ball of anxiety and depression, like crying on the way home from work, crying on the way to work. It's like the kids went home on Friday and then the 48-hour countdown started until I had to come back again. So I really couldn't even enjoy the weekend. I stopped running, I stopped exercising, I stopped watering my plants, I stopped drinking water, and if you know me, you know how I feel about water. I stopped eating breakfast, I stopped eating lunch. Eventually, I got to the point where I would just eat when I got home. The breaking point for me, we're just at home hanging out, relaxing, and my alarm went off for me to go to bed. Yes, I have an alarm that tells me when to go to bed. And I just started bawling, like blubbering, inconsolable bawling. And I'm just like, this is my career. And I am dreading to go there. Like, I went to school to be qualified to do this. And I am just absolutely dreading it. Like, this is a problem. So I woke up the next morning, prayed, did my devotional, and I don't know, I just felt this peace, like this resolve. And I was just like, I'm gonna talk to my principal today. I wasn't nervous, I wasn't panicked. I let him know that I wouldn't be returning. So he was very understanding, wanted to be as helpful as possible. At one point, we were talking about me staying, but just in a different position. But ultimately, I felt like that wasn't the right move. I was very transparent with admin all year about what I was going through. I remember one time sitting down with him, and I was just like, I really don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. And he even tried to get like an extra assistant to come in to help out, but that is just a whole nother completely ridiculous story, the way that things turned out with that assistant. So I do want to pause here and say that I have heard horror stories about teachers wanting to leave schools because they're just this horrible environment. That's not what the story is. So my team knew the struggles that I was going through, and they made it a point to try to help me in any way that they could. I had a TA that I shared with two other teachers. Her name is on my prayer wall because I thank God for her every day, because there's no way that I could have made it to December without her, just to have that other person in the room that I could look over at, like, do you see this? I was out for a doctor's appointment one day and I had a sub, and she was just so bewildered by my classroom situation that she came in several times after, like with me being there, she came in just to help out. So it was not that I was without support. It was just like, no matter how much help I got, no matter how much people would stop me in the hallway and like, oh my gosh, your class is doing so good, it looks like things are getting better, I just could not shake this fight or flight, heart racing, overwhelming feeling that I felt every day. So me leaving, it was like an attempt to preserve my mental health. Like the school, it's a great school. You ever see those schools on social media where like the teachers or admin or the PTA is doing something cute and fun, and you roll your eyes and you go, yeah, right, like what school's actually doing that? Like, this is that school. I'm not even saying that just from the standpoint of like warm fuzzy feelings, like statistically on paper, like it is a great school. And so I feel really bad leaving it, and I also feel bad that there aren't more school environments like that one. And as it gets closer to the end of winter break, I am feeling a lot of different emotions right now. I feel like a failure for leaving. I feel sad, like I'm losing a part of myself. I have worked in an academic setting for like 11 years, and I've taught for 8 of those years. So it's hard to close that door. But to be fair, teaching really hasn't been the same since COVID. It's kind of like you have that friend that you are very close with, and then all of a sudden they just start changing for the worse, and you make excuses for them and you try to focus on the good times, but it's just slowly starts turning into more bad than good. And you get to the point where you realize, like, man, I can't have this person in my life without them dragging me down. Like, that's kind of how I feel about teaching now. So it also feels like I'm losing a friend. That probably sounds stupid, but it really does feel like I'm losing a friend. I feel very guilty for leaving, because it wasn't all of them, you know? So I do have those ones that I will miss. And then I have the others that, but before you judge me, I sent a letter to the parents on a Friday letting them know that I wouldn't be returning. And on Monday, I had a kid come in and he was like, I thought you weren't supposed to be here. So there's that. But you know, like those kids that remind you like why you're doing it, like they keep you sane, like everyone else is being wild and they're just like, ugh, these kids. Like those kids, I'm definitely gonna miss them. As far as what comes next for me, I do have a new position lined up, but I haven't started yet. So I don't wanna say anything about it. I can't remember a time where I wasn't working in a school. So I don't really know what to expect. My offer letter didn't mention like what time the bell rang or when summer break starts. So I guess I'll have to ask them when I get there. I don't even know what time they say the pledge.